I told you I'd be back, and now it is time step by step to go through and build this Leo Jaymz pre-painted DIY Tele style kit. Instructions were not provided with the kit. I was a little surprised about that. So I figured I would take the opportunity to go through it step by step on video. I will ask that if you haven't watched the unboxing and first impressions video for this particular kit, that you check that out once this video is over. And as always, please take a moment if you haven't yet, go right down to the bottom, hit subscribe, like the video if you do like it. That helps me out a lot and it helps the channel out so that I can produce more content like this. Of course I do it for you guys. Ideally, I'm gonna get the neck set up, I'm gonna get the body set up, then I'm gonna put the two together and then string the guitar up and test it out. I decided to go, like you all seem to agree, with the black pickguard. In order to swap this pickup into the included black pickguard, we don't want the springs to just kind of get lost. So I'm actually gonna put this right over the body carefully so that I don't chip the finish again. Loosen these screws all the way until they come out. We wanna drop the pickup right inside the body. So the pickup with the springs are right in there. If you can't find your springs, they're probably stuck to the bottom of your pickup right on the magnet. That's where they usually end up. We have a brand new white pickguard, if anyone needs one. Put the screws right in the screw holes. It's good to have a padding on your work area, by the way. You could scuff up the table and, of course, ding up the guitar. Holding the spring in place, because that goes over the screw, I'm just gonna carefully screw this into the bobbin here on the pickup. Just until it starts poking through, do the same thing on the other side. The spring goes over the screw, line it up with the hole. We wanna be a little bit careful because we don't wanna crack the plastic around the pickup. And just screw that on. The pickup is lined up into the hole. I'm gonna keep tightening and that will raise the pickup. I'm gonna leave it down at a pretty low position. We're gonna adjust that later. Also, ahead of time, I did put a drop of wood glue on the nut. I clamped it down with a capo and some masking tape, let it set up for a good hour or two, and it's in there pretty well because that was loose. Our next step is to install the tuners right onto the headstock. The tuner and the screw holes are pre-drilled, so that's nice and easy. The tuners have multiple parts. This goes through the headstock on the back side. Then we have a ferrule with a washer that helps hold that in place, and a screw that keeps it from twisting and keeps it aligned properly. I'm gonna do the same process for all 6 tuners, so I'll show you on the first one. This is pretty simple. You just press it through. It's a pretty nice fit. The ferrule goes on over it. I'm gonna just tighten this fingertip tight, just like a canning jar. Repeat that process 5 more times. While I'm doing this, I make sure that the screw hole lines up in the back so that the screw will properly fit in, but we can check that later too. Just as I thought. So in the first video, we pointed out that there was like a Sharpie mark on the back of this headstock. The tuner, as I thought, does not cover that. I'm not gonna really do anything about that. My string winder has this nice built-in socket here, 10 millimeters, just for this purpose, and just give them a gentle turn. Of course, do the same thing on all 6. With a much smaller screwdriver, I'm gonna put the screws into the tuners so that they're secure on here. Since the holes were pre-drilled, I decided to use the stock tuners. To be perfectly honest, based on how they feel, I'm not expecting them to be great. I think that's probably one of the first things I would upgrade. But one final thing I wanna do now before I get strings on this guitar, just because it's easier than doing it later, I'm going to take the Allen wrench that comes with this for the truss rod, not actually turning the truss rod. I'm just taking the nut on the top of the truss rod and getting it to the point where it engages. I just want that seated on the top of the truss rod, because if this is loose, then turning it won't adjust the truss rod. There it is. So it took about a quarter turn and it just had a little bit of resistance, so I stopped. I'm not going to go any further. We've got the neck done and we've got the pickup in the pickguard. So I'm gonna turn my attention to the body. So as you saw in the first video, there is a bit of a finish chip on the neck pocket area of the body. As mentioned, I went through and I just touched it up with a gold metallic Sharpie, filled it in with some super glue, Once that dried, I touched it up with the color again. It's not a perfect match. I think it will blend in decently. Now, most importantly, hopefully it does work to prevent this from chipping and cracking further. We could do this step at the end. I'm just gonna get it out of the way now. We're gonna put the strap buttons on. The screw goes through, so that's ready to install. You want the right size screwdriver, because if you're using a screwdriver that slops around, you can strip out screws really easily. One of these threads on the top up here, and the other one screws right into the bottom. These holes were drilled before the guitar was painted. Just immediately around the hole, it's actually just starting to chip the finish. That should not show up with the strap button there. Holding the body firmly, holding the screwdriver firmly. We want some pressure. We want to keep the screwdriver seated into the screw, because if we slip, we could ding the guitar. We're going to do the same thing here. I don't plan to use power drills for most of these steps. If you were to use power drills, it'd be really easy to slip and gouge your guitar. I think it does a lot more harm than good. I might use it later, but we'll see. This is moving along nice and quickly. So next up, we're going to route the wires for the electronics and test the electronics once we hook them all up. So the bridge has the pre-installed pickup. We're feeding this through so that we can get the pickup down inside. The bridge goes where the bridge goes. Got the bridge wire. I'm going to do the control plate last. Putting on the pick guard now. The lip on the neck is going to come down over the pick guard. So we definitely want to get this pick guard on first. You can see where the cable channel is. And then the hole here where this runs for the neck pickup. Carefully pull all that wire right through. There's that. The output jack, not input jack. This is the output jack. This is going to go down on the bottom of the guitar. Where do you think the switch goes? That way or this way? We're going to put the switch right where I have it. This is the ground wire. Since this is a stranded wire, I doubled over some tape. I'm going to cover that, roll it up, and then the end that I have exposed, I'm just kind of folding over and sticking. This is going to help hopefully prevent this from kind of fraying and breaking the wires as I feed it through this hole. You could do this part first, actually, before you do the bridge. That would be helpful. But yeah, the wire made it through safely. We've got the 3 holes lined up here, and then we have one closest to the bridge pickup. This is actually, this ground wire gets threaded up through, and then it comes out there. We're going to leave the metal wire exposed, and then that completes the ground, so that should ground out the guitar. So normally in this situation, you'd have sort of like a channel carved out for the casing, and then the metal wire sticks out. In this case, there isn't that, so we just want metal wire, and I'm going to tape inside the pickup cavity on the casing of the green ground wire. So I'm going to try to fan these out slightly. We have just the metal fibers of this stranded ground wire kind of fanned out against the body, so the bridge is going to come into contact with that. Pushing the wire back through. This goes back where it was. All right, taking a look at the control plate. This is on the 3-position switch. So we have one set of wires, another set of wires, and then off the pot, we have another set of wires. They're all red and black. They're not color-coded. So from my left to my right, again, opposite for you, this is how I'm going to hook it up. Think of where the wires are coming from. So I have these wires from the neck pickup, and then we have this set, so male and female ends. We're just going to plug these in. Okay, push it nice and firmly until it snaps all the way in. I'm going to do the same thing. This is now the bridge pickup, and this is the next set of wires to the switch. Line those up. Oh, don't want to break these plastic clips. Push those firmly in so that they're secure. Now the last one, where do you think it goes? This goes to our output. I think it could have been cool if they either labeled these or used different color clips or different color wires to correspond. That would be definitely helpful. So talking about the electronics, we have both pickups. We have the switch. We have our volume and tone pots. And then we have the output jack. Before I screw everything down, I'm just going to test it. I definitely recommend doing the same because you don't want to do all this, put the strings on, and then have to take everything apart to redo this. How do we test it? In this case, I'm using this nice little portable rechargeable amp that you've seen recently in a Gear IT guitar. Very carefully, without disturbing the solders, pop that right in. Grab your Allen wrench for the truss rod. It's perfect. We do have a hum coming from these single coils. Putting the switch in the bridge position. Just gently tap one of the pole pieces on the pickup. Now switch it in the middle. Do the same thing. So if you're not getting any sound, make sure you have volume here. Switch this into the neck. We've got quite the hum. We want to neatly tuck all these wires in. We have a lot of wires there. We don't want to be rough on this because we could pop some of the solder joints. We've already made sure that this is clear, this is clear. I'm going to peek under my bridge to make sure the ground is still there, and it is. Now it's time just to fasten everything down. So we're getting the control plate, the jack, the bridge, and the pick guard, all secured to the body with the provided screws. These 3 larger screws with the sort of tapered tops are for the bridge. We have our pickguard screws, and then we have 2 more pickguard screws for the control plate. On low power, a low setting, I am going to use this just to get these started, then I'm going to tighten them up by hand. That will be just to save time. If you've not worked on guitars before, skip the power tool, be patient, take your time. I'm going to do the middle bridge screw first, gently. I'm aligning it so that all 3 screw holes are lined up. I'm not going all the way, so I stopped shy, and I'm just going to tighten them by hand after. Do the same thing with the other 2 screws, keeping the bridge aligned with the 3 screw holes lined up. I have this set just on 13. Okay, those are most of the way in with a little bit left. I'm going to do by hand. Feels like a perfect fit. I'm doing these ones by hand. I just don't want to scratch up the chrome or the pick guard or the body. This is starting to look like a Tele style guitar. I'm going to do the same thing around the pick guard. I'm just getting the screws started so that I align it perfectly before I sink them all in. On the front side of the guitar, I've got all the screws in place. Now I'm going to go through and tighten them all. I'm not forcing it to the point where I crack the paint or strip the holes, but I just want to get to where it kind of naturally stops, and then you're good. Okay, that should be good. Kind of get down on level with the bridge. Just look to make sure the backside especially is nice and flush. You want it flat against the body of the guitar. We're not going to force anything, just like the other screws, but we do want this down all the way. Using 4 screws, I will secure this output jack to the body of the guitar. Those did not line up very well, so that was a little bit tricky. But basically, we've got these 2 ready to join together. Please do me a favor and take a moment to subscribe if you like guitar-related content. I've always got more on the way. And if you find any value in this video, please click on the like button because it helps me produce more content like this and it helps other people see it. On the neck, right around the screw holes, there is a little bit of rough wood. You could file that, sand it off. I've got a drop point blade. I'm just going to use the tip and just sort of like shave that a little bit, just so it's nice and smooth. I don't have any like raised edges that are going to make the neck fit poorly. That took 5 seconds. We want to wipe this off. We've got our neck ready. We've got the body ready. Let's put them together. The neck plate came with this plastic guard. I'm not going to use this. If you want to use it, go for it. Totally up to you. Making sure the neck pocket is clean. Off camera, I barely touched the neck pocket, and the other side actually chipped as well. So I did touch that one up as well. Keep in mind this is a very inexpensive kit, and it's pre-painted with all the stuff you need, so I don't expect the finish to be perfect. The screws do not thread easily through the body right here. Ideally, and what always works well for me, some people disagree about this, but you want the screw holes to be just big enough that you want them to slip through without having to be roughly threaded. So I'm actually going to drill this out with a drill bit that will do that. I'm wearing eye protection because the finish here is a lot like glass, and you definitely don't want that in your eyes. Do not hold where the drill bit's going to come through. Keep that from seating. Holding this very carefully, slowly working. I would be lying if I said that I have never started doing this without the neck plate. Good, so these slip right through. And it feels like the screw is just starting to grab the neck. I can feel it kind of pull a little bit, so that's a good sign. Holding it nice and securely, yeah, this feels good. I'm doing these 2 screws first, that way it kind of pulls the body in. I'm tightening these with some firm pressure. This is not the time to show off how strong you are. You could damage the finish. You could strip the screws. We have a nice solid fit between the body and the neck. We've got ourselves pretty much a guitar. We will need to do those string trees after we string it up, but those are the next steps. It is a good idea when you're doing any work on a guitar to do that amp test I showed you before you put strings back on. Middle, neck. I'm going to use 10 gauge strings instead of the probably 9s that came with the guitar. Go ahead and put your favorite strings on it and set it up with your strings. Maybe just keep the spare set in case you break a string. We're going to string it up. And there we have ourselves a Telecaster type guitar. Installing the string tree is pretty easy. In this case, we do need to drill 2 holes for the 2 trees. The spacers here are 2 different sizes. The taller or thicker one goes closer to the nut, and the other one a little bit farther away. With a very small drill bit, make sure it's the right size, if possible just a hair thinner than the screw. Use tape to make a little flag, and that will mark your depth. We don't want to drill any deeper than the length of the screw. Make 2 dots where you're going to drill. Now I'm just going to carefully drill to the depth of the flag. Screw them down, and then align your strings and tune it back up. We are back, and this is the T-Style or Telecaster DIY kit spray painted, so it comes pre-finished. Just a quick review of this now that it's together and that it's done. I'm still very impressed with the kit. I think the finish maybe flakes off around the neck pocket a little easier than I would hope, but if the paint was perfect, I think the kit would probably cost a lot more. I think it looks fantastic. The finish looks really good. I like the way they designed it. The neck is very impressive. No sharp fret ends. Nice and level frets as you saw in the previous video. If you haven't checked that out, take a look at it. The tuners could be much better. They're pretty basic. I would replace them. I'd say even less ideal than the tuners is the bridge. I get it that it's inexpensive. I think the design is a little kind of lame. I think it's okay to leave it, but I just don't really like it. So I'd say Leo Jaymz, very good job, except for the packaging. In another video that's coming out soon, you're going to hear me bring up the previous situation about the body being in contact with the cardboard, because I want to revisit that later. But you'll have to see that video when the time comes. The moment we've all been waiting for, including me, I want to hear this thing plugged in. I'm just going to run through it really briefly. I did do a very basic setup. I adjusted the neck slightly. I added a radius to the bridge so that it matches the neck. I did set the action at about 2. No buzzing. I think it could go lower, but these screws stick out a lot. I also did a slight intonation. It needs to be intonated better. This is the bridge pickup. Don't mind the squeaky stool. Really good response on the tone knob. With slight adjustments, the tone knob really seems to have an influence on the sound, so let's hear that all the way off. I switched to clean on the amp. I do expect it to slip out of tune pretty easily. I haven't really stretched out the strings, but if you hear it go out a little, Just to compare so you can hear them side by side, all 3 pickup settings. What do you think? Let me know in the comments what you think of the quality, what you think of the looks, what you think of the sounds. I like the way it goes together. The holes lined up nicely. They're all pre-drilled. It's simple. You don't need a lot of tools. It's got the easy wiring. It does have really nice playability, even with that little basic setup I gave it. That's all stuff I'll dial in over time. I think it really sounds kind of crisp and full. Now this guitar I thought was going to be pretty heavy based on the weight on the box, 12.5 pounds. The actual finished guitar is actually only 7.5 pounds, which is super comfortable. It's enough to let you know that it's there, not like cardboard. In a previous video, I said that there's a bone nut. I don't think that's the case. I believe this is actually cream-colored plastic. Let's hear it with a little dirt. Go to that nice bridge position. The gain's about halfway up. What do you think? Tell me what you think with a little bit of breakup on that. It's got some gain about halfway. I think it handles it pretty well. These are ceramic pickups. The action's pretty high for my liking. I think it should come down. The bridge with these tall screws doesn't really give much more room. I think that pretty much sums it up. My main focus today was to show you how to build this guitar, how to assemble it, just to give you some feedback on the quality, things like that. It's truly a good purchase, I would say. This is my 6-word review for this Leo Jaymz DIY painted guitar kit. I'm very impressed. I want more. And I did order some more, so you can check those out in a future video. Now is the time when I sit here awkwardly at the end of the video because I have a video for you to check out and the subscribe button. So do me a favor if you wouldn't mind, click on that subscribe button, check out that video. Just click.